Redux. All right, so here's the most trivial Redux example, right? Hello world in using React and Redux. Okay, so Redux is a JavaScript library not specific to React, right? That it was built for maintaining state, right? As its own concern, right? Just like with many things in computer science, we try to identify a concern, right? And once it's a big enough concern, we try to separate it and isolate it so that we can apply the best strategies to solve that concern, right? And we usually refer to this as separation of concerns, right? And many design patterns fall from this overall arching strategy of how to break things down and divide and conquer, right? And deal with complexity. And one of these complexities is dealing with state handling, right? And we saw already some of the challenges of using the out-of-the-box state management that React comes, right? That's what the state, the default way of handling state in React. It's challenging. We have to shuffle data back and forth, up and down the tree of components. Also shuffle back and down. Also event handling, right? So what we'd like to be able to do is rip that part out and say, no. We're going to try and centralize that. One place of maintenance where we can talk about state management in one single place, as opposed to spreading it out across multiple components, right? It is very, very common in other design patterns like model view controller, right? Singleton patterns, factories. There's tons of design patterns that deal with this issue, right? Like data access management, data access objects, of centralizing some of these in a place where you can maintain it in a single place. Otherwise, if you spread it across the entire application, maintenance just is much harder. So decouple state management and rendering logic, right? So you can treat them as separate concerns, and makes it easier to write stateless React that are much easier to test. Okay. So let's look at a very trivial example. Well, first of all, we'll need to install it. Right, first, we'll need to install the libraries. So presumably you have maybe a Hello Redux application, and we'll have to install a couple of libraries. So if we go in there into the Hello Redux, we need to install the Redux. This is the core Redux library, which it doesn't have to do anything with React, but we do need to have the glue that connects Redux to React. So we need these two libraries, and then we can run it. So let's create a Hello, the simplest of applications. So here we have a trivial Hello component. The only thing that it does is that it renders Hello, so this is how you would render it. Let's actually do it. Let's come in here. Let's create a little Hello. And so we'll do a create a React app, and this is Hello Redux. So that's going to create the boilerplate of a React application. While that's going, let's go grab a couple things that we need to install. So we'll go into the Hello Redux, and we'll install Redux. That's still going. While that's happening, perhaps we can open it up in our favorite IDE. Meanwhile, let's open, and let's navigate in there. I believe it's under webdev, under 2018 fall. There it is. Let's open that up. It might be done already. Okay, there we are. Is it done? Okay, let's go in there and let's install Redux. It's gonna download the library, install it, and while that's happening, let's also copy the React Redux so that it'll install this other library. It's still going. Okay, it's done, and now we're going to install the React Redux. There it is. So we have both libraries installed. And once that's done, we should be able to just run it, npm start. We won't see any difference. It'll look just like the plain old React application out of the box. Okay. Excellent. So let's go back here. Let's blow away some of the all of this. We'll remove it so we can start from scratch. I always like to start from scratch so there's no magic. So let's see. Let's create our first index.js, and in here let's import what we need. So here's React from React. And let's we'll also need the DOM, right? So React DOM from React DOM. And we'll do React DOM.render. And in here, we'll just say hello. Hello, and we'll need a document.getElementById, and this will be the root. There's our hello. So this is our boilerplate application, right? We just replaced it with a dummy hello. All right, so let's keep going. So let's create our hello component, perhaps under src components hello.js. So let's do that. So under here, we'll create our component, our first component. So this will be components. Yep. And in here, we'll say this will be hello.js, and these are all going to be stateless, right? They're all going to be stateless. So import React from React. And this will be const hello. It takes no arguments and just renders as h1 hello. All right. And we'll need to export it, default, and then hello. So from our index page, we could perhaps just render that, right? So it'll be hello. There it is, right? Let's bring this over here. Right, so it renders exactly the same way. Right? There's nothing new there. Excellent. So it's rendered. All right, so let's talk about states. You know, how do we handle state? How are we going to handle state? Well, obviously, if my component is always rendering the same thing, there is no state, right? This always is going to render the same thing. There's no point of maintaining any state, right? Because it's static. So presumably, this should be able to render one way or another depending on what state is in. Okay. So for instance, as in it taking some kind of argument, right? For instance, some message, and the message will render one way or another depending on what the current state it is, right? The application will render one way if the state of the message changes to one thing and then changes to something else. Okay? So what Redux is a concern is how is this state maintained? Who is responsible for maintaining this state? We already said that the components are not going to maintain their own state. So somebody has to be responsible. And so that means that any state information has to come from the outside, right? From somebody else feeding it through these properties. All right? Right now it's not rendering like anything. The only way would be for the index to feed the message, right? Say message equal world, for instance. Right? Only from the outside, somebody has to provide that value. Okay? So it's somebody else's responsibility, not the components. All right. So let's remove that. So how do we do that? Who's responsible for this? Right. So we have hello with the message. So we're going to have Redux handle the state somehow, right? And so we're going to introduce the concept of the reducer. The reducer is going to be the responsible for maintaining that state. So here, let's create a reducer. The reducer, the only thing that the reducers will be, it will be some function, right, that can calculate somehow what the next state of the application should be. Right? It has this logic of knowing where am I now, what events occurred, and depending on those events, calculate what the new state of the application should be. Okay? And this will be centralized in one single place. In this case, this very simple, trivial function. Let's do it. Let's implement it. Let's implement here the reducers. So a directory, reducers. And we'll call the reducer hello. And the only thing that the function will do, is calculate the next state of the application. For now, let's keep it simple. And it's just going to, this is a return, right? This is an automatic return. I guess we can do that, right? So this is the function. It's going to return the new state of the application. And the new state of the application is that the message should be world. Right? Right now, the computation is trivial. It always evaluates to the same thing. Right? There's no logic. Right? There are no branches, no looping, no nothing. It's always the same state. But that is the state. And it only lives here. It doesn't live anywhere else. Okay? And this is the only place where the state is changed, manipulated, calculated. Right? Okay? This is the only place where it exists. So the question is, how do we connect the two? How are these two connected somehow? How do we handle and shuffle the state generated by the reducer? The reducer generates the next state, and somehow it has to be fed into the component. Well, we know how to do it statically, right? We can just say message equal whatever, right, in the component, and then it gets fed, right? Well, we want to use it dynamically using this new technology. How do we do that? Okay, containers. Containers is going to be the glue between these two worlds. Right? Somehow, this object, whatever that object is, somehow this has to reach that message over there. Right? So what are these? Those are properties, right? These are properties of the component, right? And this is a state. This is the state which is being calculated. So somehow we need a mapper that maps. How are we going to retrieve things from the state and map them to properties of the components? Somehow we need to connect the two. Right? And that's exactly what containers do. That's their only reason of being. They don't render anything. Right? The only thing they do is map state in the reducer, maps them to properties in the component. Right? So let's do that. Let's create a container. And containers go in the containers directory. And we'll create the hello container. Right? Okay. We'll need a couple things there. Let's build it. First, we'll need to import React. Import React from React. Okay. And we'll need the final component that wants the properties. Right? So we'll need the hello component. So we'll have to go up to the components and get the hello component. We get that. Okay. We'll also need someone who does the connection between the two. Right? That does the connection between the state world of the reducer down to the properties world of the component. Right? So we'll need the connect function that does this. All right? And this is part of the React Redux world. So the React Redux library it contains all the plumbing between these two worlds, between the React world and the Redux world. And the connect function, I think it's appropriate, right? It connects the two worlds. Okay. All right. Now we need to create, somehow we need to calculate what the mapping is. What is going to be the map between the state world and the properties world, right? So we'll create a function that calculates that for us. So cons here, we're going to create a function called state to property mapper. So it's going to be a function that somehow is going to get a hold of the state from the reducer. Somebody's going to say, hey, here's the state in the reducer. Do the mapping. Right? So the function takes the state, and it, as a return, it needs to tell me. It's going to come back and tell me, okay, these are the things that live in the state, and they should be mapped to these other properties. Right? So this should return an object map that says what maps to what. So we want to map into the component that property. Where am I going to grab that from? I'm going to grab it from the state. Right? That in the state, in the reducer, that's the state. Right? And the state has a property message. So state.message. Right? So I'm returning a map that says where am I getting it from and where am I putting it in. So extract from the state this value and map it to this property. Okay? Everybody okay? All right. All right. So that we got the calculation of that map, and it's a function because there could be some computation here, right? We could iterate and do concatenations, and we could do if statements and for loops and ifs, all sorts of branching. But as a result, it needs to return a map. This function has to return a map, whether it's a static map like this over here, or it could be a calculated map on the fly. Right now it's static. Actually, most of the time it's static, right? Where the computation actually happens in the reducer. Okay? Right? All right, actually, so we have the map. So now we have to connect the two worlds. We have to say, here's my hello container. It's going to be a function. It's going to be the result of the connect function. And the connect function is going to take two arguments. Well, actually, it's one argument, which is going to say, the connect is going to take the state mapper. It's going to take the state mapper. And the connect is going to say, I'm going to look at the reducer. I'm going to pass the state generated by the reducer. I'm going to pass it down to the function. And that's how the function is going to get a hold of the state. It's going to return something. It's going to return something, right, that's going to be applied to, the component. This is what is going to actually feed the property. It's going to feed the property to the hello. Right? Again, this is the plumbing. The plumbing is the hardest part. Okay? Once you've done this, 20, 30, 100 times, then it becomes a second nature. Right now, it's all out there. It's all very ephemeral. Right? Okay, so what it does is that it grabs the state from the reducer, passes it to the mapper. The mapper retrieves the element, returns a map, and then that map is then used to feed the state into the property into the component. Okay? All right, we're almost there. We are going to export it. We'll need to export it because we need to use it from here. Default hello container. And finally, one last thing. In the index, finally, what we'll need to do is to actually hook it up hook everything up from the reducer, right? We need to give it a kick. We need to give the reducer get going, start generating state. right, and feed it to the rest of the application. So let's do that. Let's get a hold of the reducer. The reducer lives in reducers. Hello? Actually, we don't need this. What else do we need? Let's see. We'll need the container. We'll need the container. Containers, the hello containers. Okay. We'll need to create what is called a store, right? One of the cool things that the reducers do is that not only can they generate the next state, they can actually generate a history of states, right? It can generate the next state and keep track of all the possible states that the application has ever been in, right? So it doesn't actually manipulate or change the state of the application. It actually says, here's the next state. So we're not modifying the state of the application. We're just telling you what the new state is. You could come back to the previous state, which is a pretty cool thing, right? You could have the application do like an undo. The undo would only be navigating backwards in the history of the state, right? So you could travel back all the way back to the beginning of the state of the application, which is pretty cool, right? And you will always have the entire history of the state, and you could traversal backwards and forwards, right? And put the application in any one state, which is also very good for like testing, right? Where you could have you can generate your own list of different state that you would like to test your application. You know, where is it that would exercise all the possible state that the application could be in, you know, for test purposes, which is really, really cool. So all that maintenance of the current state and all the previous state is maintained in what it's called the store, right? The store, and so we need to create the store. The store is provided by the reducer. The reducer generates the store, and then the store is provided to the application, and then that trickles down the rest of the plumbing. So let's do that. Let's create a store from the reducer. So we'll do const store. This will be create store from the reducer. Hello. This function is part of the redux. So that's the store, and then we need to provide the store to the application. So we need a provider. So let's create a provider. So import the provider, right? So notice that this create store is part of the bare bones native core library, the Redux library, right? The provider is a construct. It's a React construct that maps the Redux implementation of the store, maps it to the React world, right? So this provider is from the Redux, from the React Redux. Okay, all right, excellent. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to remove this hello. We're going to create a provider, and we're going to say that the store is this store. Okay, and our application right now, it'll be our hello container. The hello container is going to receive the store, is going to connect the store to the component, and then the component will receive the state in its properties. Right. So let's do the hello container. Let's see, anything else? State, right? So we connected the container. Right, the state makes it into the container. How? By using a store, the store provider, which is going to take the container is going to use the create store to generate the store, and then provide it through the provider. Right, so we create the store, we provide it to the container, and then it gets rendered in there. Okay. And then we have the whole pipeline, the whole plumbing all done, right? Well, at least one way. Right? We have the reducer going, one way, right? And then we'll see how it can come back by handling events and whatnot. Okay? Let's see. Expected the reducer to be a function. It's not. The reducer, let's see. It is a function. Oh, do I need to export it? Sorry. Export default hello. There it is, right? That world exclamation point is coming from the reducer. If you don't believe me, we can go to the here and change and put some more exclamation points. Right, there it is. So that state is coming from the reducer, and we've gone through the plumbing, right? And this is the hardest part in React. This only comes with practice. Right? You have to practice it, doing it a couple of times. Once you've done it several times, then it will eventually become second nature, right? But it's a good exercise to get to know how to plumb this. All right. All right. So let's focus on going the other way. Going the other way. All right. So let's do that next.